we've had customers come in that wanted trucks refurbed or taken to a service level of their desire while they wait for their new truck.
Yeah.
So, they're already moved on knowing that the truck that might come in for refurb, they're going to put onto the market, but they just needed to get it to that goal line of when they're going to get the new product in. We've seen that. We've seen certainly customers that, want that truck no matter what. So fix this, bring it up to what we need it to be or what we want it to be, the customer wants. But you bring a great point, and lead times from OEMs, I think they're going down. There's always supply chain, you watch the news every night.
You're listening to another episode of Rig Recon Live. I'm Bruce Quick alongside Jason Witmier. And before we get started today, let's go over a couple housekeeping items. Make sure you follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. That's at Rig Recon. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And then most importantly, visit our website, rigrecon.com, where you can find all of this content and more. So we're joined by Jason Davis today out of Bulldog. Jason, we won't do justice in giving your introduction, so why don't you take a moment, give us your background, what you're doing, and what you're involved with. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for having me on the show. Bruce, thanks for the introduction. So Jason Davis, a little bit of my background. I'm predominantly engineering is my real strong point, I'll say. Most of my career I spent at KME, probably 15 plus years in various different areas, product management and engineering in the latter years. Currently, I'm with Bulldog OEM, manufacture bodies, supply different components to OEMs in the fire industry, hence the name.
And I'll just, he's always short with his background. I'll say that Jason and I have had the opportunity to work together for many years. I'll say opportunity or curse that he probably sat next to me for a good 5 years of that.
Opportunity, Jay.
But we've worked together on several projects, and Jason brings a very well-rounded background to the fire industry. He's been with the volunteer fire company for a long time as well. So he's just another one of these people who's seen it from both sides of the street. So it's great to have you today, Jay.
Appreciate that, Jay. Thank you.
We're gonna talk today about refurbs. And when I just say the word refurb, it can mean a whole different thing to different people, because how far you go with a refurb, what you're doing with a refurb, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. A lot of it comes down to whether or not you're going to come up to the current NFPA codes. But just from your perspective, from Bulldog's perspective, if someone calls and says, I want to do a refurb, how do you guys take it? How do you define it and how do you break it up?
Wow, Jay, I'll tell you that, that name, I think that's going to evolve as time goes on, because refurb, kind of is a one size shoe fits all, and that's not necessarily the case. So kind of how we handle it, we'll field the calls and our sales team's out there fronting, obviously the face of the organization with the customer, but we'll typically bring them in-house, so to speak, so that a team internally, and that involves engineering as well, that we have in-house. We look at the job and really, just to quickly give you a little rundown of some that I've seen in our last 2 years, really, since we've really started doing more and more refurbs. It could be a repaint, a new chassis, a new body, use my existing chassis. It could be a fluid analysis. I need the engine and transmission changed. I'll be honest with you guys. We've even had trucks come in and we've replaced frame rails. So it is all encompassing, that word. And I think it's going to evolve as time goes on, because we're seeing more and more demands for customers saying, here's what I have. When can you do it? How much? and how long. I think that's another great point, because we see trucks that customers that bring it, that bring into us, and they need a substantial amount of work. Not only to achieve the latest NFPA guidelines, but quite honestly, to still keep functioning. So it's a big name, Jay, and we've seen anything from the smallest things to modify this, create a new body, just like I said, all the way up to rebuild engines or change the chassis. You know,
That's great stuff. And Jason, approximately how many different types of refurbs are you guys seeing and doing these days? I know you talked
and
through some of them.
yeah, Bruce, I'll be honest with you, Bruce. It really varies. Currently, now I would say we have a backlog of probably better than a dozen. And they're anything from aerial refurbishments. And what I mean by that is, the aerial gets first of all, the aerial get completely taken apart, clean, sandblasted. We'll have it inspected by a third party. And then, it can involve new cables, uh, wheels, pulleys if needed, all new hosing. The hydraulic infrastructure of an aerial is pretty intense and complicated. And then of course, any truck that get refurb always gets paint.
Right.
So, they're going to want that truck repainted, whether it's the color that the company uses currently or something new. And the other thing I think that's said, that should be said is they might not go with a new body, but almost all the customers that I've seen, they'll change the configuration somewhat.
Hmm.
Well, they might not want a brand new body, but they'll want the layout different, trays, push pulls, compartmentation,
Sure.
even the pump structure. So it really varies, but we've had the whole plethora. We've had the tankers, pumpers, brush trucks, and aerials. So we've kind of had a full slated menu of different types of apparatus.
So one of the forms of a refurb that I think is common throughout the industry is saying that I'm going to rechassis a vehicle, which basically means I'm going to use my existing pump, the pump house, all that structure. I'm going to use the existing body, but I'm going to put a new chassis underneath it. Talk to us a little bit about when you're doing that type of project. How long is that project going to take? How long is it going to take to get that raw chassis? And what's going to be involved in that chassis? Are you going to do like a pre-construction on the chassis? Things like that.
Yeah, great point, Jay. So, like I said, we front it with our sales team, right? So we'll have them intimately involved. And then one of the unique features for our organization is we have a pretty decent or healthy, I'll say, engineering staff. So we'll look at it. We'll get back that information to the sales team. And if the customer so happens to do an on-site visit or pre-construction, we'll certainly have that team involved as well. And then we'll go over whatever they might need. Now, something to be said too about refurbs is, and this is both not only on the customer side, but also on the supplier or vendor side, is you're not sure sometimes what you're getting into.
Sure.
So when you budget this, or if it's a project that's bid, you got to always have that conversation about what if. And, I kind of said earlier, we ran into frame rails that were bad. We've had trucks, and typically our sales team and that'll go out in the field and they'll look at the truck, but there's a lot of things you can't see. Obviously, if you do a fluid analysis, you don't know the health of the engine or transmission until that comes back. Subsequently, it's very difficult with fire trucks that have more than one frame rail lining. So not only, a frame rail line truck or an aerial, they might have triple line frames or more. And you might not see that corrosion in that until you lift the body off or lift the torque box off or lift the tank out. So I think you got to be very cognizant of that. And, having the depth and the experience in house really helps so that you can, find those issues, talk to the customer. As you had mentioned, Jay, go through your normal pre-construction, what's accepted or what's expected from both sides. But naturally things happen. And I've seen that more and more, especially with my experience at the OEM level, building new trucks. That's all brand new. But when you're doing a refurb, you're actually peeling the layers off the onion or the orange. And sometimes you find surprises. So you want to be, the way we approach that is with our sales team, we want to keep that line of communication open to say, look what we found, pass that to the customer. And obviously they're not going to want not to fix anything that you find as a concern.
When you do a rechassis, whose chassis are you typically using? If it's a custom,
Typically Spartan. That's what we'll use. And you brought up a point, Jay, and I didn't answer your question fully.
it's okay.
that really is probably your lead time is getting the
Yeah.
chassis. You know, and of
And
course,
what is the rough lead time now on just a raw chassis from Spartan for you? And I
six
know,
months,
and this is an estimate.
yeah, 6 months to a year. Sometimes they're a little bit quicker depending on the content. You know, certain models. Obviously, I think a MetroStar is a little bit quicker than a Gladiator. But yeah, and even the commercials, Jay. So, we have a lot of customers coming in with the commercial tankers and even the commercial fire truck products that the internationals, the Freightliners, the Kenworths, we're still seeing quite a bit of them. Matter of fact, we have 2 or 3 of them in house now that we're doing. So uh, that's the long pole in the tent, if you will, is to get chassis.
And any idea on how much money it saves the company to do this versus maybe a completely new rig?
It's a great question, Bruce. I struggle with that too, but I would say, you're probably 20 to 40 plus more percent you can save depending on the content. Now, we have done our organization, one or two, that the customers wanted that truck. So, it was going to take what it took to get that truck back and meet their expectations, rebuild the engine, um, do whatever it needed to be, upgrade it to new NFPA.
Right.
And certainly that could obviously add lead time and cost as well.
I think one of the things that people have to keep in mind is, let's say you're going to rechassis something that's 20 years old. And maybe 20 years ago, you paid, let's just pick a round number. You bought a pumper that was $500,000. And now you want to rechassis it. And someone comes to you and says, it's going to be $500,000. And you're like, well, hang on. That's what I paid for it new.
Right.
But if you took that same truck and built the whole truck new today, it's going to be $1 million plus.
Right. Right.
So yeah, while you're paying just to rechassis what you paid for it brand new, you couldn't get one today brand new for that cost.
You can't. And you know what, Jay? That's a great point. We've had customers come in that wanted trucks refurbed or taken to a service level of their desire while they wait for their new truck.
Yeah.
So, they're already moved on knowing that the truck that might come in for refurb, they're going to put onto the market, but they just needed to get it to that goal line of when they're going to get the new product in. We've seen that. We've seen certainly customers that, want that truck no matter what. So fix this, bring it up to what we need it to be or what we want it to be, the customer wants. But you bring a great point, and lead times from OEMs, I think they're going down. There's always supply chain, you watch the news every night. So I think, things are changing in a more positive or, the timelines are decreasing. But we certainly see that with customers. And then of course, you have customers that are attached to that truck. They want to keep it. And again, not to say the money's no object, but they're willing to work with you and go back and forth. That's another thing too that's unique compared to buying new trucks. When we have that discussion with the sales team, there's a lot of what could you do for this,
Right.
or here's what I have for a budget. So, obviously looking in the line of that, depending on the majors or what the biggest parts are of the vehicle that need replacing, bodywork and paint's always up there, guys, because it's time consuming.
So if I rechassis, obviously I'm going to get a 2027 Spartan. That's going to come and it's going to meet I believe the last revision of NFPA was 2024. So it's going to meet the 2024 NFPA code. It's a 2027. It's going to have the new emissions engine, but now I'm going to throw on it this old body and this old pump house, which obviously you've done your homework. You've looked at it. You wouldn't take a body that was falling apart, throw on a new chassis. You would talk to the customer about that. But
Sure.
Let's say you throw on their existing body and pump because it was in good shape. Do you now have to bring the body and pump up to the current codes, or can they take a mixed bag there where the chassis meets new code, but the body, say for example, the body was built 15, 20 years ago and it didn't require chevrons at the time. Do they now have to add chevrons, or is it kind of a mixed bag that they can pick and choose?
It's a little bit of a mix, Jay. We let the customer guide us. Obviously, we're always trying to influence to go to the latest guidelines. But you bring up a great point. And, another great point there, Jay, too, is I'll just admit, the engineering required with the new emissions, because we don't know what we don't know, right? So I think you're going to see in the refurb world, you're going to make pump houses. You're going to have to change things to fit things together because we're not sure where certain exhaust components are going to be. The other thing that I'll say that I think often gets overlooked in this is, remember when you use your vendor, they're not the OEM that made the truck.
Right.
So you have to have the horsepower to be able to do some engineering and understand how this was designed and adequately provide that product to the customer of what they desire. So, we certainly do all the different brands. And I'll say one of the most challenging things too is the wiring, because all the OEMs had a plethora of different wiring. I could certainly speak back to the KME days. We offered 3 different systems. So you're seeing a lot and a lot of the lighting manufacturers and certainly the different suppliers have these great multiplex or control systems that can read data bus. So you see a lot of people putting them in refurbs rather than going with the inherent multiplex system, which in some cases the program unit's obviously proprietary. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. And to see a hardwired truck or a conventionally wired truck, you know what you're getting into,
Well, I mean, can you buy a hardwired chassis from anyone these days? And
I don't believe so, Jay. I have
And I
not
don't
seen
think so.
that. I don't believe that's available anymore. Everybody likes the multiplex.
no, and the one good point that you made there was, well, you made a couple of good points there. I don't want to shortchange you, but the one that jumped out at me is, so take back in the day, you had your choice from like VMUX to S key or hardwired. Well, S key's gone.
Right.
VMUX is on to what they call, I think they're calling it VMUX 2.0. And now FRC has our Omniplex system. So you buy that chassis and it has Omniplex on it, but that body had an old S key system in it. It's going to have to be torn out because they're not going to interface.
Yeah, the power modules and that, where are you going to locate them? Harnessing, right? You're going to have to get to A to B. So you got to think of that too and have that conversation with the customer. How are you going to control it?
Yeah.
That's great stuff. And does the vehicle get a new title since it's on a new chassis?
Yep. New chassis, new title. Yep. So they'll get new title work with that. And I'll be honest with you guys, it's a relatively low percentage currently with the trucks we're doing that have new chassis. It seems like a lot of the customers really want to keep what they have. If it's a custom cab over, they seem to be endeared to that product and then want to, get it back in shape or have it, service them for more years to come.
So you touched on this a little bit. Obviously, I can bring a rig in that maybe it's just faded. It's been out there in the service for a while, but it works. The heart of it works. The engine's working. The pump is working. You guys offer services of stripping the thing down, repainting it, evaluating it while you have it raw, correct?
Correct. Yeah. We certainly encourage customers to stop by. We are fortunate that a lot of our customers are in our general area or not that far away. So we like to keep that open communication, and here's something I'll give too, Jay, as a piece of advice. When you get your truck refurb and you give the vendor a paint code, remember that your truck's X amount of years old and it's been sun bleached and faded. And you might back that fire truck into your bay and it might not match the trucks that you have currently. So it just, it might seem like a kind of a minor or a moot point, but if you're spending a fairly considerable amount of money and, paint can be challenging, you want it to match whatever you have in your fleet. So I'd say be very careful with that. We use 2 different paint systems currently at Bulldog, and we actually have like a digital camera almost. They're from the paint suppliers to match a paint. So you could match a paint if it's faded. We've seen this a lot with the trucks down south simply because of the environment.
Yeah.
The sun will fade those paints. And, like I said, it could be a small thing, but when you get that truck and it's not that cherry red or that orangish green, whatever you're looking for, that's a disappointment.
So what you're saying is if I'm going to get my body repainted, but I'm not going to get my painted roll-up doors repainted. They're probably not going to match.
They're probably not going to match. Yeah. Yeah. And the roll-up door suppliers are great. And I think it's good that they make the customers give them paint chips.
Yeah.
Because, we've run into it at OEM where we have just like you said, we have a nice body, the doors come in, and that's a disastrous thing to have not match for one reason or another.
So I'll talk a little bit about a component. At FRC, we offer LED lighting and we offer upgrade kits. Now, when we came to market with it, we went the simple route to start. Oh, you have an old FRC light, an Optimum, a Focus. We made an adapter plate that you could take that old light out, not have to do body work on it, put a plate on. You may have to drill some new holes to put the new plate on, but it would cover the old holes. And now you can put a Spectra in there. We're in the process of working on letting you do that now with our Radiant series. That's easy. That's something where you as a dealer, as a Bulldog, can sell them that upgrade kit. Where it gets more complicated is they've got an old set of wheeling lights. We don't necessarily have all those hole patterns, and our lights don't match up perfectly, but they've decided, no, we want to go with the new Radiant. That's where I think a Bulldog, and you can talk about it a little, Jay, where you bring to the market, hey, we can get you the new light. We can check your wiring to make sure it's the right size, and you can do the body work to make it fit or make an adapter yourself.
Yeah, great point, Jay. So yeah, at our facility, we have the engineering, but we have really good fabrication capabilities and great craftsmen. So we're able to take and I would say 95%, maybe even more of what we've done so far is body removal. We rarely, I should say, we rarely don't take or remove the body. It might have happened once or twice, but we kind of like to do that so that we put new body mounts on. We look at the substructure. Whether there's rubber in between the way the OEM made it, U-bolts, spring bolts, whatever the original manufacturer did to install that body. We like to take them off. We typically put them through our weld department. And just as you have said, Jay, we'll weld up any holes that we need. We'll fabricate whatever we need. If it's a pocket, that used to be popular years ago, pocketing in lights and that, we'll eliminate them. We had a rescue truck come through recently, sliding windows. They wanted to change them. So there was a lot of welding on that. Happened to be a stainless body. And that's another thing too. We don't shy away from the different types, whether it's a stainless, obviously aluminum's predominant, or even a galvanneal. We're okay with fabricating or working on any of them and painting them as well. So it kind of gives us a little bit of a leg up, I'll say, just because we put it through our normal fabrication department, which always has a busy schedule of doing a variety of different components for the OEMs, whether it's bodies, trays, you name it, that we supply the customers. And then we put it through our paint department last. Right now we have 7 paint booths, and we're looking to expand that. So we've actually are looking to put some more booths up at a new building on our part of our property. Really, and the new building is going to be dedicated primarily just for refurb. Because one thing, I'm sorry, Jad.
No. I was just going to ask the question. Just so that our audience knows, you've got locations I know all across. You've got New England covered. You've got Pennsylvania. You've got Louisiana. Are you doing refurbs at all 3 locations?
No. So we'll do light refurbs in Louisiana. But if it's heavy lifting, as I call it, or body fabrication, we'll bring it to PA. Now, we might put the body in that on PA, paint it. 3 of our facilities have paint. The Albany, New York, the Hopkinton, Mass, and the Louisiana has paint in-house, paint booths. So there is some times that we'll split the project up, bring it to PA, maybe for a body reinstall or a new body, and then take it down and let them trim it out and finish it. The other thing, too, to remember, and actually it was unique because, again, a lot of us, at Bulldog, we're used to working for OEMs. When you do a refurb, you need kind of more room because you can just imagine back in this area and taking the stick off the device and taking all these shelves and trays and windows and windshields and seats. You got to have either a large area to store it or have racking. And, you can't just leave things on the floor. Plus, you got to kind of inventory it because you're talking an extreme amount of components. So with our new building that we're looking to put up, we're actually going to have racks for takeoff and then new parts and keep them like a stall build so that the crew or the people can, they're intimately involved with the disassembly, taking a lot of photos. It's another important thing which you can share with the customers, and we do, because you got to put it back together. And again, they're all different OEMs, so it's not like you have a playbook from all the fire truck manufacturers that says, here's how this goes together. You don't.
Right.
So you got to be careful when you start the project.
And maybe before we jump on to the next thing here, Jason, maybe is there any misconceptions or things that customers just aren't aware about that they should be when it comes to the refurb process?
Yeah, I think there is. I think it's important to keep that communication open, Bruce, because you don't want any surprises, right? You don't want a customer saying, I didn't know the frame rails were bad when you didn't know either. So that's a conversation to have up front. Again, I think it's based on experience to say, look, here's some things I've had happen, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. You necessarily can't bake that in to your pricing, but let's keep an open mind, and here's what we think. We'll also do some testing too. We'll pump a truck and just try to analyze if there's any other failures that even the customer might not be aware of, just to try to give them a peace of mind that they've settled with the correct supplier or vendor. But it's a relationship,
Right.
they're trusting you taking that vehicle, and you might not know everything that's not wrong. And I'm just trying to think from memory. We haven't had, other than bad frame rails, which is fairly significant, but it's not a showstopper, guys. I'm telling you, we work with a real good supplier locally, and we have done them in-house, but they can change frame rails within a month. I mean, so, you think about it, it's really the skeleton of the truck, right? It's the bare bones of frame rail. So it seems insurmountable, but they do it all the time.
You
These
change the
class
whole
sales.
thing out, or you piece it in?
They'll typically slide them in, Jay. They'll do a side at a time, especially if it's lined. And they're very good at it. The biggest issue that we'll run into and we'll see is it's hard to get the drillings.
Right.
So again, going back to there's OEMs. So what you got to do is make sure you're careful with what you take out and either engineer and measure it or simply take that out and use that as your guide for your new rail. But again, we use a local vendor, especially if we have too much in-house to do, and they're very good at changing them. They do it all the time because Class 8 and the cost of these vehicles today, the insurance companies really want to keep them on the road. And so if there's any damage, there's, they're replacing these frame rails pretty handily. We haven't done an aerial with frame rail problems yet. And the aerials, they can get challenging because some OEMs stack multiple pieces of frame.
Yeah.
And so that, I'm sure we'll see it at some point, but I think that would be probably more challenging.
Yeah. What's important for our audience to realize with an aerial is when you're doing an aerial, that frame, it's not just supporting the body and the cab on it, but that is your strength when that aerial's up in the air. I mean, the torque box specifically attaches to the frame rails, and then the outriggers come into that torque box, and that is what's keeping that aerial up in the air. So a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Well, as we sort of close out today, we always like to end with like a top 3. So, in your opinion, top 3 things you should consider when doing any type of refurb.
So I think there's 3 that come to mind pretty quick, Bruce. So the budget, right? This can't be open-ended to you really got to have a good relationship and open dialogue. So that takes me to my number 2, the vendor. You got to trust this supplier, and whoever you're using, make sure that they're equipped to fabricate and make those things you need. They can do in-house. They definitely have to be capable of large truck work because they're obviously very big, vehicles. And then a timeline, just as with the budget, this can't be open-ended. So
Right.
if things change and the customer ordered a new chassis and it's delayed, the communication is critical to fit that into your production schedule. And I think they're the 3: budget, vendor, and timeline. And no, not one particular order, you
Sure.
know. But I think they're the three that I would say. And you know, and I'm going to be honest too. And, and I'll go back in my years from the last OEM I was at. You know, I think this is evolving, just like Jay had started. You know, in the term refurb. So I think this is going to change. Maybe NFPA will look at this stronger over the years. You know, with what people are saying. Maybe there'll be new terminology or different stages of refurb. But I think it's kind of in its infancy yet. And, you know, I think the industry's learning from it. And I think you're going to see more of it because, you know, everything's expensive, right, guys?
But, you know, it's an interesting point you bring up in closing. I think that because the lead times on new trucks are long, because the prices are so much more, we want to do more to make our truck last longer. It's not just refurb. Go to your dealer and get annual maintenance done. Make sure you're getting the proper maintenance done and asking them to evaluate things. The one thing that jumped out at me as we were talking here, we've done some podcasts. We've done some Rig Recon. We've done some with fire apparatus and emergency equipment about the new engines and the new emissions. And there's still a lot of unknowns. It's hard to say that. Here we sit in April of 2026. The new engine's coming in January of 2027. There's still unknowns. The biggest unknown has been how that exhaust system's going to fit in. And you made the point earlier, and it really jumped out at me. Rechassing a truck going forward is probably going to involve a new pump house. You're probably not going to fit the old pump house. You might not even fit the entire old body on. You might be able to modify the body, but you're probably going to have to make a modification to that front officer side compartment because of that new exhaust.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jay. It's scary too, you know, and we've gone through emission installs in a previous life, right? And we'd have beta engines by now. We'd be driving them around,
Yeah.
you know, working through the cooling analysis and the heat reject, you know, and it's concerning because it seems like it's a major technological jump this time.
Yep.
No, that's great stuff today, guys. And sorry for the background noise. Got a little bit of the landscaping crew cleaning up here, but I'll edit it out, so it's no problem. But,
that's all right. I had a chainsaw, Bruce, about a half hour ago. I don't know what my neighbors cut, but
that's all good. That's all good. So as we end up today, you had your top three. Jason, I'll open it up to you for final comments here, and we'll wrap up another great show.
Jay, thanks for being on with us. My final comment would just be explore your options. You know, the new truck's going to cost a lot. If you think that your old truck might be able to get a new life, explore your options. There's a lot out there available to you. There's not a one size fits all. So reach out to the experts in the industry. Let them help you. Let them guide you. You got to have trust in them. They're not all out there looking to just make money off of you. Be careful that you don't do exactly what Jason said earlier. You don't go into it with a budget, and then when they start to peel that onion apart, they find out it's rotten inside. Make sure that you've protected yourself when you go in.
Great stuff today. And Jason, thanks again for your time. Another great episode here on Rig Recon. Again, follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Most importantly, visit our website, rigrecon.com. Until then, expect the best.